All right, there we go. So I'm going to start with my light source over here. And that means it's coming down this way. Now, like I said, this is a crash course. I'm not really marking you guys on the different places you're shading. So I do not want you guys to write on this. You're just going to shade it yourselves. So here is going to be the highlight. So HL for highlight. This area is going to be the mid-tone. Down here is going to be the shadow. And over here is going to be the cast shadow. Now, the reason I'm teaching you this is because this is the easiest way to learn to control your pencil. And we're going to learn to control things when we're painting. Now, for this, I'm getting a slightly bigger brush than the one I was using before. And you can do it in any color. I'm going to do it in gray. So, water on your palette. I have a gray here. And I'm going to create a wash. So that means I'm going to create like a watery thing that I'm going to cover my paint in. So just to review, I do not want you to write this on your ball, okay? You guys don't write this. This is just for you so you can see it. Highlight, mid-tone, shadow, and cast shadow, okay? So do not write this, but it's just for your reference. So I've watered this down. Now, here's the thing. The highlight area is going to stay white. And in order to do that, we do not use white watercolor paint. A lot of people use it. I never use it because I find if you have to use it, then you've already made a mistake. So what you're going to do is you're going to start at the shadow area. And you're going to paint in circular motions like this. Okay, so if you look, I've painted in that kind of motion. Okay, and I want to keep with that circle motion. Now, the reason I'm going bit by bit, and I'm going thin here and then looping back, is this is a sphere, so I want to make sure I'm maintaining that circular shape. If I just paint like flat lines, it's going to look flat, and spheres are not flat. And most people at this point should have figured out a sphere is circular. And the other thing I want to do is, this is where the paint control comes in. As I'm getting closer to the highlight, I'm going to stop using the wash, and I'm just going to take a little bit of water. So there's my water, okay? This, I don't know if you can see this. This is me dipping my brush in water, making sure it's clean. I wipe it off so it's just damp. And then I'm going to go here and I'm just going to go in circular motions and smooth out that line, okay? What I'm trying to do is make sure that there is not a solid line between my mid-tone area and my highlight area, because my highlight area has to stay white. Okay, so I'm doing it again. I'm taking like plain water and I'm just using it to soften up this area so that it's very, very light and it's going to go into my highlight area. Okay, so it should look like this. There should be a pure white section here with no paint on it, and the rest should be mid-tone, like just that one flat tone that you did. Pretty much up until you get here, and then you're just going to gently use plain water to smooth this out, and I'm using circular brush strokes like this. Okay, once you've reached this point, what you're going to do again is, there's my wash. I'm going to create another wash. Mixing, I'm using my gray, creating that other wash. I have my tester page. Remember, you always have to use your tester. And I'm just looking. Okay, so that's a little bit darker. Perfect. Now, I'm always going to start at the bottom because the bottom is where it's darkest. Okay, so this is a bit of both techniques. I'm layering. Okay, so I'm putting a darker coat down, but I'm not going to go as high up. I'm going to go to about there, so the mid-tone. Okay, and I'm going to put it on as a layer. And again, watch, I'm tilting my brush to use the flat side to maintain that curve, right? I want that curve, almost like a half moon. Now, once I've reached this spot, I'm going into the mid-tone. I'm going to do the same thing. Put a little bit of clean water in my brush, wipe it down so it's not soaking wet, and then I'm just going to use circular motions to smooth out this area so that this line, this dark line where I've done the second wash, it melds into the mid-tone. Okay, the idea is just like with pencils, I'm smudging with paint. Okay? Always maintain that circle. This like seesaw motion with your brush, that's important. Now, what I'm going to keep doing is this process, all right? I have my wash still. I'm going to keep adding a little more paint, making sure it's a little bit darker, using my tester to make sure it's darker, and then I'm just going to keep going on layer by layer, but less and less. So I'm keep moving up, but not as much. See, if you'll see here, this is why I've taped it down. My paper, because it's a bunch of layers of water, has started to go a little warpy, which means like it starts lifting. If your paper is doing this a lot, meaning like it's starting to go really ripply, what you need to do is stop. Okay, at that point, you stop painting and you give it a second to dry. Watercolor, a lot of it is about patience. So as soon as you're done, as soon as it's getting too ripply for you to control, especially if you're not using watercolor paper, you need to give it a moment. Now, if you have a blow dryer on hand, you could do that. You could blow it with your breath. But the important thing is, especially if you're painting and fibers of the paper start coming up, so it starts looking like really almost like rags, and you can like pull little pieces of paper out, you've gone too far. You need to give it a chance to dry. Now, if you look, this is pretty good. It's dark here, so that's the shadow. It's coming up to a light highlight, and we're just practicing that shade. The last part is down here, the cast shadow. So what I'm going to do is go to the bottom here, and because it's a circle, I'm going to do like a kind of circly shape. I'm just going to create a cast shadow. Now you do this by going to the lowest point and you go straight across. My light source is here, so the shadow should be here. Okay, and you can do the approximate shape of a circle, but this part isn't really as important. Yeah. And then the final touch is to take very, very, very dark color, mix it with your wash as usual, and use the very tip of your brush to create that dark line between the shadow and the ball. Okay, just to separate them. All right. So, and of course, water. Smooth it out. You always want to keep smoothing it out. So, I think that looks pretty good. The idea here is to do a gradient, just like when you were doing the shading chart. You're going to go from dark to light. Don't use white, just use the water. So remember, we start with a very light wash with gray, in my case. You could use any color you want. So just a lot of water, a little bit of paint. And then for every layer, you add a tiny bit more paint and you stop a little bit short. So the first layer goes up to about here, and we maintain that circle of no paint. The second layer goes to about here, right where the mid-tone is, and then we use the wet brush to smooth it out. And then so on and so on until you get to this very, very bottom layer where it should be darkest. Now, that is the quick tutorial on how to do a sphere. The reason we're doing this is because we're looking to shade with our paint. We need that level of control to do the next project. So spend your time, if you're doing the traditional painting, doing this and finishing your color wheel. Once that is all complete, you're going to take a picture of it and you're going to put it in the Dropbox. Okay? So the sphere needs to be done just like this, and the color wheel needs to be finished. Whatever technique you want to use, you can use.